So today we're continuing our Chakra 3.0 series, which is all about healing the interface between our inner perfection and this wild world we live in. If you're new to these talks and these series, I'm going to give you a short explanation. But there's a series, the Chakra 2.0 series, where we look at the chakras in their perfection. The throat chakra, today we're looking at the fifth chakra, and the throat chakra is one that our previous language would be that my throat chakra is blocked. That's why I can't speak. That's why I can't speak my truth. That's why I have thyroid issues. That's why I have, parathyroid issues, because I'm blocked in my throat chakra. And this is how we would speak about it for decades. And even that, look at me, I'm holding my throat like I'm being choked. I'm being told not to speak. Isn't it funny? Like this is what it feels like. And what's interesting about that, when we interpret it that way, it feels very internal. Like somehow in here, there's a blockage and I have to let the blockage go. Or maybe even I ruined my throat chakra as a child because I was so oppressed. Or maybe I was hung so many times for being a witch in past lives. I have throat chakra issues. Or I had my head cut off. Like there's a lot of, when people look into past lives things, I certainly, I would believe if someone told me that I'd been choked a few times in past lives, I'd kind of believe it, But the problem with this idea is that it feels very internal. And it almost feels like, well, this is just my lot in life, that I'm going to walk around with some kind of psychic chain around my neck or some kind of throat restriction that I'll never get over it. Or if I do, I would have to spontaneously heal from the inside out, which, as much as in theory we believe is possible, on a practical level, it's not that easy to internalize. So then healing becomes very difficult. And it's easy for us to believe that this is just my lot in life, that I'm just not good at expressing myself. I'm just not one that speaks. I'm just very shy. That's just who I am. But the Chakra 2.0 series says, but the throat chakra, the Vishuddhi chakra here, is perfect. This is absolute perfection. There's nothing wrong with this chakra. Within every one of us, this chakra is absolutely pure flow, right? We easily can receive through the throat chakra and we can give. This is perfect. The challenge is there's this kooky world we live in. I don't know why we all chose to come here, besides that it's really pretty and nice and it can be really awesome. But it can be also really dark and oppressive and cruel. I don't understand it, and we can theorize as to why. I don't really enjoy that conversation, but there's some real darkness out there, and that's a reality. And so there's all this darkness out there that really doesn't like the fact that we are intuitive beings, that we have sight beyond what we can feel, taste, touch, hear, and smell. That we know things. That we each individually have a purpose here. Every single one of us is a unique being with a very unique purpose and something unique to say, something unique to share. And it doesn't come necessarily from the physical world. It comes from insight. It comes from intuition. It comes from spirit guides. It comes from divine guidance. It comes from universal galactic energy. This is not something that can be controlled. This is not something that people can oppress. It's how we're made, right? When you look at the chakras and you look at the 7 main chakras that we talk about, the lower triangle, the physical triangle that governs our physical world, the first chakra where we're sitting, this is our experience of the earth, our experience of nature, our experience of the village, our experience of community. Second chakra, our experience of each other, us chit-chatting, us making love, us meeting someone cool at the grocery store, us joining into a choir, whatever. That's that second chakra, joy. Our third chakra, so what was my assignment here anyway, right? What am I meant to be doing here? Why did I incarnate here? What is my purpose? What do I need to know to carry out my mission? So this triangle, this lower triangle, is literally, wow, look at me here on earth. That's awesome. Here's what I'm meant to do. Here's what I'm meant to know. How you doing? Like, let's hang out because humans are fun. And how do I fit into the village? Right? This is all very tactile, 5 senses stuff, right? This is us incarnate as a carbon life force here on planet Earth. Right? That's why we're here. It's not a lower triangle like our lower aspect. It is who we are. This is our physical being, right? But the funny thing about this kooky world we live in, and I actually genuinely believe, and again, it's a deep rabbit hole to dive into, but I actually believe that whoever the powers that be are that have made it so dark and so kooky are actually less evolved life forms. I really genuinely believe this, which is why our world is so governed by money. That you would look at nature and put a financial value to it, or to human life, or to believe that hoarding money is a good thing. Like, it's a curiosity to me, which actually tells me they don't have access to the higher wisdom. They don't have access to the bigger picture. They don't have access to what we can see, why we're here on Insight Timer, because we know there's more, and it's more valuable, and it's more interesting, and it's more nourishing. So now you imagine we live in a kooky world designed by people who perhaps, or beings or whatever, that are sort of stuck in a very toxic way in the first, second, maybe third chakra. Maybe, I'm not even sure they're that evolved. We sometimes give the kooky world far too much credit as being, devious geniuses or something, but I don't think that's the way it is. So then all of a sudden we have this beautiful upper triangle. We have our crown chakra that we connect to the universe, connect to the galaxy, connect to infinity, connect to God, connect to this great picture that we are really a part of. Imagine you can connect with this 7th and bring that wonder and infinity down into our experience on the planet, right? How amazing is that? And then we have this third eye, which we'll talk more about next week, this ability, of sight and interesting things. Well, our Vishuddhi chakra is part of this upper triangle of a reality that is beyond the physical. And that means that the insights that we get in this upper triangle have nothing to do with what we can see, smell, taste, hear, touch. It has nothing to do with survival on the planet, it has nothing to do with interactions with people, nothing of these things. And so, of course, the irony is, this is where those who don't see that want to stop us from talking, right? We can't oppress people if people know that they're actually divine beings. or that there's guidance and help out there, and that we're not alone, and that maybe we actually live in a multidimensional space. I'm not clairvoyant. I don't see other beings. I don't see spirit guides. I don't see other dimensions. But man, I have enough friends in my life who do, that I fully believe it, and to know that I am not alone, that we have help and we have friends in high places, or whatever, however you want to see it. So it's a very interesting thing when we start to look at these upper chakras, to really understand that they don't fit in the kooky world we were raised in, right? They don't fit in a world that says, prove it to me. Let me see the math. Let me see your spreadsheets of pros and cons. Why would you do something like that? As soon as we're accessing these higher chakras, all we can do is sort of look at them and say, don't you see it? Don't you feel it? Because I can't prove it to you, because I'm not looking in the third dimension. I'm not looking in that physical world. These upper chakras are our upper dimensions. And again, the word dimension is a funny word, but this is a different aspect of who we are. So now we've got this perfect Vishuddhi chakra, this perfect, energy vortex right here. We have a world that says, no. If I can't see, prove it, touch it, it's not real. And our throat chakra is like, yeah, but I hear all kinds of things. I hear guidance. I hear my truth. I hear all kinds of things. What are you talking about? And of course, if we're young and we're children, and our parents are like, now that's ridiculous. How many kids had to get rid of their imaginary friend? In air quotes, imaginary friend. What do you mean you hear this? What do you mean you hear that? And it's, theoretically, metaphorically, or physically, like beaten out of us. Now that's enough. That's enough out of you. That's, you just keep quiet with all that. How many, in my generation and before, the saying was, children are to be seen and not heard. Do not speak. So here we are, these perfect beings with divine inspiration, divine connection, and the ability to share what we hear through our Vishuddhi chakra, and we're told to sit down and shut up. Don't speak. Now you're just causing trouble. You just go to your room. You just think about it. You come back when you've got something good to say. Right? This was the hammer that came down. So our Vishuddhi chakra is like, what? And we realize, okay, whatever this gift is getting me in trouble. Like, on this planet, this is not a popular thing going on. So I'd better learn some things. So we get a program running that says, okay, when these ideas come into your head, just don't say them out loud, because that's going to get us spanked. That's not going to get us the job. We're not going to get the A in school. We're not going to have any friends. We're not going to be popular. Just keep that to yourself. Now, one of the challenges is that we don't remember necessarily that we put that interface, that program in the interface to help us survive in this kooky world. We don't remember. So we start to believe that it's who we are. We start to believe that, well, I just don't share my truth with people. That's just who I am. And I just keep stuff to myself because I just see the world differently, I guess. And we really deeply internalize it. And then what happens is we start feeling very alone. And we start feeling like no one can see us. And no one really knows us. Because I don't share what actually comes into my mind. Like I remember when my mom was sick. My mom, for anyone who's new, she died when I was 25. So my mom was really interesting because My mom was this really kind woman. Like, she was genuinely just full of love and kindness. But she was well trained to sit down and shut up. Don't cause trouble. Say things that make your husband happy, your parents happy. Keep the peace all the time. And what's really interesting is, when she was dying, when she was sick, I started doing a lot of research about women specifically who had breast cancer. Because at that time, Carl Simonton was doing really interesting work. Bernie Siegel was doing interesting work with people who had cancer, specifically breast cancer. And one of the number one things was that they didn't share their truth. And what's really interesting about that, and of course this is an old training in this curious world for the last couple millennia, is you don't share your truth if it goes against the beliefs of the clan, right? Don't cause trouble, don't cause rifts, don't cause problems, right? It's very, very important training in the clan. Very dysfunctional training, but very important. It's powerful training. And what I learned about my mom and about many, many people like her is they actually felt so alone. They had so many friends and they were so popular and so loved, but they felt totally alone because nobody knew the real person. They knew the person that they had presented, the persona they'd created, who was always smiling, who always said yes, who you could always count on, who was always there to tell a joke and make you smile and make you feel good about yourself. That's who they wanted to be, and that's who they became, and that's who everyone knew. But they never knew the person inside who had other thoughts, who had other ideas, that maybe wouldn't have been so popular, that would have maybe caused issues in the relationship, that might have caused issues in the family. And then they disconnected from their own self and didn't share it with you. And it's sort of like that Thoreau saying where he said, most men live lives of quiet desperation. This is often what it feels like if we have these programs that don't allow the flow of our throat chakra. We walk around the world hiding ourselves from everyone. It's not their fault they don't know us. It's us. We don't share ourselves. Maybe we don't share because we're afraid of being alone. We're afraid you won't like me. I'm afraid I'll, piss off everybody and I won't get invited to anything ever again. But the irony is, even if you do get invited, you're not actually showing up anyway. Somebody else is showing up in your place, like some representative of you. So you might be surrounded by people and you're completely alone anyway. So these are interesting ideas as to, they're interesting clues as to how do we now clear that interface, right? The Vishuddhi chakra is sitting, waiting. It's waiting to just flow out into the universe. We just have to look at the programs that we've adopted to help them flow. So the word Vishuddhi means filter. One of the meanings of the word Vishuddhi. Vishu means poison or impurity, and Shuddhi means to purify. So if you imagine this kooky world out there, full of nonsense, full of misinformation, full of fears that aren't real. Like we actually realize how many of the fears that are out there that are placed into our brains by marketing, by our parents, by the church, by the government, by the society, all these fears, they're not real. They're just put there to make you small, to control you, right? You cannot do these things, or else. They don't know what else. They just put the fear in there, right? Nonsense. The Vishuddhi chakra is meant to purify and filter all of this stuff that's coming into us. So what the Vishuddhi chakra, there's the back side where we hear information, and the front side where we share. Theoretically, it's just a beautiful flow through. It's not like everything has to go in, hang out for a while, and then get shared. If our filter is clear and we trust it completely, stuff comes in and it's filtered. Nope, not for me. Yes. Nope, not for me. So it just comes in and it's just triaged right away. Like, this is not important. This is. This is not important. This is. This is irrelevant to me. This is. This is not even true. This is. That simple. That's Vishuddhi chakra. I remember when, so I teach Kundalini yoga. And historically, Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini yoga to North America, he used to teach, that there was this coming age, this information age, back in the 60s and the 70s, that we would be flooded with information. We'd be flooded with data. And we had to have a strong nervous system to be able to sort through it, or we would go mad. And it's so interesting now, living 50 years later, and you talk about the inundated minds, the inundation of information. And here's the crazy thing is, so we live in this world of the internet where you literally can find anything you want. You can find anyone who has written an article who proves your point of view. Anything you want. It doesn't matter. You can find information that people have gathered who think the way you think, and therefore it must be true or whatever. But again, this is all just kind of third chakra, prove it, let me see the numbers kind of stuff, right? Well, everyone always says, oh, well, you can't believe everything you see on the internet, right? This is a huge thing, right? It's like, oh, you can find anything you want on the internet, you can't prove it. But you know why you can find anything you want to find on the internet? Because it's exactly the same with people. Just because someone says it doesn't mean it's true, any more than just because you found it on the internet, it's true. But so now imagine taking this filter, imagine this, having this awareness that, well, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. That goes the same for when you were growing up. It's the same thing. Just because your mom said this doesn't mean it's true. Just because the church said this doesn't mean it's true. Just because your fourth grade teacher said this, it doesn't mean it's true. The internet was built upon all the people in the world. So all the opinions of the people that we grew up with are now on the internet. So we needed our Vishuddhi chakra growing up. We needed to be able to filter right from birth what was true and what wasn't true, what was for my journey and what wasn't for my journey. But our filter was overlaid with someone else's filter. This is the number one way to oppress people. I'm going to tell you what's important. I'm going to tell you what to read. I'm going to tell you what to listen to. I'm going to tell you what's truth. I'm going to tell you the filter you need to use to discern the world. So maybe we get a church overlay. Here is what reality is. Here is how you will sort the good from the evil. We get one from our parents. Here is the filter you will use to sort who is a good person, who is not a good person, what is a good job, what isn't a good job, what's a good opinion, what isn't a good opinion, right? We get all these overlays, and it might be, here's the role of a woman. Oh, now don't you start making your partner feel bad about themselves. You just be quiet. You're going to hurt their ego, or all this nonsense, right? Or vice versa. Like, this isn't a gender thing. We all got this. We all got hit with the same club, right? That here is what you're going to believe and here's how you're going to see the world. And if you don't, we're going to call you weird. and eccentric. And, oh, well, aren't you just full of yourself? And and who are you to interpret the world like that? Who are you to decide what's important, what's not important? Right? Like this is what we were raised with. And it's like, who am I? I am literally a divine incarnate being that has come to earth and is hanging out with you guys. Why was I given these divine chakras if it wasn't to discern my truth? Right? So how do we get back onto that path? How do we find that clarity again? So we've clearly stated that, okay, the world wanted us to have their filters. And again, to understand, I truly, genuinely believe that whoever created this very kooky, dysfunctional world was not accessing the higher chakras to begin with. So any sense of insight was irrelevant because it didn't exist in their world anyway, right? So to be really clear, that it's kind of the blind, it's like blind people telling people who have sight which way to go. And you're like, no, but I can see. No, you can't. No, you can't. It's like, no, I really can't. No, you can't. And you're like, okay, I can't. So how do we get that sight back? How do we listen again? Well, one of the interesting things in Kundalini Yoga and that really drew me to it was this concept of Sat Nam, this mantra, Sat Nam. And of course, we talk a lot about Satya, truth. And truth is this inner truth, right? Not what I think about that or what I wish was true. I mean, deep first chakra to seventh chakra, here is the reality that I'm living in. Here's the reality that I'm experiencing. And that Sat is that truth. And Nam is that I bow to that or that it's my name. And when I first started practicing Kundalini Yoga, they would say, okay, inhale Sat, exhale Nam. Inhale Sat, exhale Nam. And it was like, and I could already feel this funny little dissonance inside of me saying, what? My truth? My truth is who I am? Like, that truth deep inside is who I am? Like, are you sure? Because if I'm afraid that if I share my actual truth, if I really share who I am, I think I'm going to get in trouble. I think my partner will be mad at me, and I think my parents, they won't want me at family gatherings anymore. It's almost like we've repressed it so much. We're sure that because we repressed it, it must be bad, right? And it must mean that whatever I'm going to say is really cutting and mean and divisive and dangerous, right? Like it must be because I oppressed it so much for so long. And it is true that you may have unpopular perceptions of the world, or you may have, and again, when I say unpopular, I just mean uncommon. That's all unpopular means. It just means that it's not like everybody else. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's negative. It just means it's not the same as other people. Well, why should we be like other people? Like, is that really why we came to Earth? So that we could have 7.5 billion clones of each other? Or is the purpose of being here to actually experience who we each are? And this is a really important philosophy to be clear about for each of us. That if I believe that every human being on the planet has a unique purpose, has a unique incarnation, has a unique DNA sequence, and that this is important and relevant, then perhaps what's flowing through my Vishuddhi chakra is meant to flow through it. I meant to say it. I meant to write the book. I meant to share how I see it, how I see things. I meant to paint that picture. I meant to do that thing. And if someone says, well, I don't know why you would do that. you can honestly kind of look at them perplexed, saying, well, why would you? It came through me. Like, what does this have to do with you? Like, genuinely, this came through this being. You have your own channeling. You have your own insight for your life. So it's a very interesting thing, because one of the things we have to look at in this interface is, now, if I am allowed to say my truth, and again, this isn't truth about you. It's not about whether or not I think you're on your path. This is just me being honest. Are other people allowed to be honest? Are they allowed to sort the world also? Because if we have been forced to adopt someone else's filter, we often will force other people to have our filter as well. And we won't allow other people to filter and sort what's coming into their world, because we want them to believe what we believe, or we want them to think the way we think. So it's sort of an interesting double-edged sword. We think we've got this filter up to make other people happy. But if we drop this, we have to be very clear whether we're allowing other people to do it too. And oftentimes that's how we know we're doing it, because we're totally cool with other people sorting the way they want to sort. Like, look at the world right now. We are so divided, right? Well, those people shouldn't think that way, and those people shouldn't think that way. And it's like, but they do. It doesn't matter why. Is it okay? Is it okay that they do? Is it okay? Because if it's not okay that they do, the number one reason is that we don't think it's okay that we do. But I'm allowed to actually sort the world. I'm allowed to have information come in, and I'm allowed to say that's not true, that's not important for me, and I'm allowed to go forward. Right? So it's important philosophically first to say, do I even believe this is real? Because, for example, this talk is about healing the fifth chakra. So normally we might teach, okay, well, you need to do humming exercises to activate the throat chakra. You need to do plow pose. You need to use color therapy. You need to do these things to heal the throat chakra, right? This is the normal thing. And those things are really great. But if you have a philosophy that says we do not have unique paths, I have to keep the peace. We have to all believe the same things. We all have to see the world the same. It doesn't matter how much chanting you do. You will not override that program. Right? Nothing will change. But if you can expand your thoughts and say, well, what if every person has a unique Vishuddhi chakra? In the same way that we have a unique thumbprint, this Vishuddhi chakra is perfectly unique and perfectly in line with my mission, in line with my third chakra, my mission on life, who I am as a person. If I can truly believe that, then I can start doing these cool modalities. Because then what's going to happen is I'm going to use the modality, and it's going to sort of start to release the programs. I'm going to start having a few dark nights of the soul. I'm going to start having some emotional breakdowns in a really good way as I release these programs that have oppressed me for decades. Right? We have to have the right container to grow into this true self. The other thing that's really interesting is sometimes we get really attached in the world to what we share, like it's part of our ego. Like we don't understand that this Vishuddhi chakra is here to share what comes through us uniquely. So, because I've written books, I often will join writers groups and things, and just to kind of chit chat with people who write. And one of the number one things I would find, say on a Facebook writers group, is people who say, I really want to write a book, but I just don't know what to write on. How do you pick the topic? And I've never understood this because I only write books because something is flying through me that has to get put down somehow. So maybe I do talks about it, or maybe I do courses about it, or something else. But most of the time, eventually, it's going to end up written in a book because it's just literally coming through me that I have to write it down. So isn't it a funny thing that we want to write something, but it's almost like there's nothing coming in the back chakra, but we want something to come out the front? Or it's like, I really want to say something important. I want to be remembered for saying something important, this kind of idea. But isn't that a curiosity? That for some reason, we don't know what to say. So then the question is, have we put a filter in there ourselves to say, I know I want to say something on the front side of the filter, but I don't like the information that's coming in. Every single one of us is intuitive. Every single one of us has a beautiful fifth chakra. So what if the person is actually hearing amazing things about, dogs or something, or about flowers, or about, I don't know, who knows what. But for whatever reason, there's a filter there that says, yeah, but that's not important. No. That's not the topic I want to talk about. That's not the thing I want to be remembered for. There's more important things. Well, who decides what's a really important thing? Right? Who decides what's interesting to talk about? Right? The day before yesterday, I was listening to a talk by Rupert Sheldrake. And Rupert Sheldrake is this fascinating scientist who, I guess maybe predominantly biologist, I don't know. I think he's such an interesting interdisciplinary guy. 40 years ago, he wrote a book, and it was about morphic resonance, morphic fields. And this is a book I first discovered when I was researching, writing What If You Could Skip the Cancer? My story through the breast lumps and all that. Because I was trying to understand, because I had this miraculous healing, which didn't make sense according to the world that, medicine was describing, or the world was describing, or Isaac Newton described. So I started looking into like quantum physics and chaos theory and all this, and I discovered Rupert Sheldrake's book about the idea that we aren't individual particles, that we are actually patterns repeating themselves and building upon ourselves, that we are these morphic fields that actually affect each other and affect ourselves. And it's been 25 years since I read it, so it's kind of old. It's not clear in my mind. But anyway, so I really like Rupert Sheldrake. He got in a lot of trouble when he wrote the book. This had actually come to him 8 years before he wrote the book. But when he would talk to his colleagues, they would just like, this is, what did they say? It's so funny when a word completely leaves you. This is like your death wish. What do you call it? Like a career death wish. That's not the right word, but it's something like that, right? This will be the end of you if you publish this. No one will take you seriously as a scientist if you publish this. So he chewed on it for another 8 years before he finally said, no, I'm going to publish this. This is important, information to share. So he published it and got into a lot of trouble. But that's okay. So 40 years later, I'm watching him be interviewed by the Pari Center in England, in Italy, who put out the David Bohm stuff and all that kind of thing. So I love that. And they were asking him, they said, so what are some of the things that were once really interesting to you? And he said, one of the things that I'm still really intrigued with is the fact that birds can return to their place of birth every year, like migratory birds. He says, I find this fascinating, and I've always found it fascinating. He spent his whole life thinking about how do they actually get back to the nest? And he says, people just decide, oh, well, it's just magnetism. He goes, but magnetism just tells you where north is. It doesn't really tell you where your nest is. And, well, this means, if you have a certain filter that says, no, the only thing worth sharing are philosophical truths that change the world. I want to be the Dalai Lama. I want to be Gandhi. I want to be Martin Luther King Jr. That's the only thing worth sharing through my Vishuddhi Chakra. But what if you're intrigued by homing pigeons? And what if that takes you deep into interesting study? So this is also an interesting question to ourselves. Have I put in a filter myself that says only these things are worth sharing? Only these things are enlightened. Only these things are of value to society. Right? Then this is also not going to let it flow because we've installed a false filter. Our Vishuddhi Chakra is perfectly designed for this being, this incarnation. And if our brains have imposed a false filter, we can't flow. Another really important piece to look at is, we talk a lot about the I am moment. The moment that I realize that I really matter, right? That I am actually an important person. And I saw actually a post on Facebook this morning or yesterday, and it said, you are not part of the background of someone else's story. So, and when you think about that, you are not part of the background of someone else's story. This is often why we don't share our truth. Because someone else is having an experience and we're just sort of meant to be part of the background. We're not meant to say something that maybe disagrees or is different or shares another viewpoint. We're just meant to stay quiet. Just keep it back. So this is a very interesting thing to imagine that you actually are living your own life. Like you are the driver in your story. You're not the background of anyone's story. Not your partner, not your kids, not your parents, not the business, nothing. You actually are just a unique being walking through the earth. And maybe you shift in and out of people's stories based on that. Right? We don't have to stay attached to being in a group and being part of the background just to be kept, right? We are an individual, fascinating being flowing through the universe and perhaps changing crowds all the time. And the corollary of that, like the other part of that understanding, is you're not the main character of someone else's story either. Right? The opposite of not being in the background isn't that you're the main character in someone else's path. And this is really important too, because sometimes we want other people to fall in line with us too. We want our parents to see us. We want our parents to understand us. We want our partner to fall in line with our journey. We want them to see it the way we see it. We want them to think, we want them to share our filter as to what's important and what's true. Right? We want our kids to have our filter, that we think we've done a good job raising our children because they have the same filter for reality that we have. So it's a really interesting thing to say, I am not the main character in your story, but I'm not the background in your story either. So then you say, well, what am I then? And then you're literally in the center. Like you can almost feel your alignment. And you're like, so I'm just me. Stuff comes in and I share it. I process it. I move through the world, right? That we really are these wonderful, unique beings, wandering through the world, hearing intuition, hearing guidance, and we share them. We share our truth. Maybe we speak them, maybe we dance it, maybe we paint it, maybe we do service for people, but whatever we do, it's just naturally flowing through our very unique filter, our very unique Vishuddhi chakra. We never feel alone because everyone does know us. And it's a funny illusion that if we were honest, that no one would want to be with us. We can become very offensive if we're oppressed. And that's a really important thing, that if we feel oppressed in some way, then sharing our truth, in air quotes, is often very retaliatory. It's very, and here's what I think, and you can't tell me this. Well, that does push people away. But as soon as we really get rid of our stuff and we really clear this interface, we're just people. We just see the world in the way we see it. And nobody has to agree with us. No one has to see it our way. It's like, I don't want anyone here. I don't want you to see the world my way, because I'm still figuring out my own filters. Right? Like, we're all on this journey of sorting all this out. We're all kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. Who's thinking there? What's going on? So all we can do is just do our own stuff and say, this doesn't work. Why am I not sharing this? Why am I not being honest? Why am I not? Yeah. All right. So thank you so much for being here. And I hope you have a wonderful day.